She noticed him long before she ever spoke to him, because some people pull your attention the way a bruise pulls pain when you press it. Quiet, unavoidable, aching. Every afternoon, just beyond the back edge of the schoolyard, behind a sagging chain-link fence stained with rust and old flyers, he sat alone on an overturned milk crate, thin as if the world had been slowly taking pieces of him and forgetting to give them back. His jacket was always too light, sleeves ending short of his wrists, and his shoes had cracks that opened like tired mouths when he walked. While other kids spilled out of the building laughing, shoving, tearing into lunches they didn't even want, he stayed still, eyes low, pretending he wasn't watching. She knew that look. Hunger had a way of sharpening people, turning their awareness into something almost painful. She carried her own version of it every day. At home, her mother woke before dawn, moving softly so she wouldn't disturb her, tying her hair back with tired hands before leaving for a cleaning job, promising dinner would be something small but warm. Money was a constant whisper in their apartment, never loud, always present. That day, like every day, her lunch was packed in a brown paper bag. One sandwich wrapped tight in wax paper, an apple with a bruise her mother had carefully cut around, and a note that said "Love you, baby," written in rushed handwriting. She sat under the bare tree near the fence, the one spot where the noise thinned out, and unrolled the sandwich. She felt his eyes on her before she saw him look up. They flicked to the food, then away, shame moving faster than hope. Something tightened in her chest. She tried to ignore it, took one bite, but the taste turned to dust in her mouth. The bell had already rung. No one was paying attention. Before she could talk herself out of it, she stood, heart pounding like she was about to do something dangerous, and walked toward the fence. He stiffened when he realized she was coming closer, like a stray animal expecting a kick. She stopped a few feet away, held out the bag through a gap in the wire. "You want this?" she asked, keeping her voice light, like it didn't matter either way. He stared at it, then at her, suspicion and longing warring in his eyes. "I'm good," he lied automatically. The kind of lie people learn when pride is all they have left. She smiled softly. "I already ate," she said, even though her stomach had already begun to ache. That lie felt different, cleaner. He hesitated, then reached out slowly, as if the food might disappear. His hands shook when he took it. He didn't say thank you at first. He just opened the sandwich and ate like someone racing time, chewing too fast, swallowing hard, tears slipping down his cheeks without permission. She turned slightly away to give him dignity, pretending to be interested in the clouds. When he finished, he wiped his face with his sleeve, embarrassed, voice barely audible. "Thank you," she shrugged. "It's nothing." But he looked at her like it was everything, like she had reached across something bigger than a fence. "What's your name?" he asked. She told him. He repeated it slowly, careful, like he was memorizing it. Then, suddenly, something fierce lit behind his eyes. A spark that didn't belong to a starving kid behind a schoolyard fence. He gripped the wire, knuckles white. "I won't forget this," he said. "One day I'm gonna be rich, and when I am, I'll come back and marry you." The words tumbled out clumsy but certain, a promise too heavy for his small frame. She laughed, surprised, not mocking but warm, because the seriousness of it all felt unreal. "You don't have to marry me," she said gently. "Just be okay." He shook his head, stubborn. "No, I mean it." The bell rang again, sharp and final. She picked up her backpack, heart doing something strange, something tender. "Take care of yourself," she said. As she walked away, she felt the hollow in her stomach deepen. But something else filled the space. An unfamiliar fullness, the quiet satisfaction of choosing kindness even when it cost you. Behind her, unseen, the boy pressed his forehead against the cold metal fence, rain clouds rolling in overhead, and whispered her name like a vow, repeating the promise over and over, not because he believed in fairy tales, but because for the first time in his life, someone had fed him without asking for anything back, and that kind of mercy deserved to be answered someday. Time did what it always does. It moved forward without asking who was ready. For her, The years after that day behind the fence were shaped by learning how to carry weight without letting it bend her spine. Childhood ended early, not with drama but with responsibility. Her mother's back ached more each year, the bills stacked higher, and dreams became something you folded away carefully so they wouldn't get torn. College felt like a distant planet, but she still studied hard, late at night at the kitchen table, lamp flickering, textbooks borrowed and outdated. She worked wherever she could, bagging groceries, wiping down counters, mopping floors in office buildings that smelled like other people's success. Teachers told her she was bright, but brightness didn't pay rent. She learned to be practical. After graduation, she enrolled in community college while working full-time, her life a constant negotiation between exhaustion and determination. Nursing wasn't a dream at first. It was a decision. People always needed care. Hospitals didn't disappear when the economy shifted. She pushed through anatomy classes half asleep, hands stained with sanitizer, feet sore, heart stubborn. Being a black woman in those spaces meant learning how to speak calmly when you weren't being heard, how to work twice as hard without appearing angry, how to protect your softness in a world that often mistook it for weakness. There were nights she cried silently in the shower, water hiding the sound, wondering if kindness was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. Sometimes, when the loneliness crept in, she thought of the boy behind the fence. Not romantically, not like a promise, but like a reminder of who she used to be before survival sharpened her edges. She couldn't remember his face clearly, only the way he looked at her. Like hope was something you could hand to someone and trust they wouldn't drop it. Meanwhile, his life unfolded on a rougher map. After that winter, he bounced between places that never quite became home. Foster houses where food was counted and affection was conditional. Group homes loud with anger and boredom. Hunger stayed with him longer than it should have, even when his stomach was full, shaping the way he hoarded opportunities the way some people hoard scraps. School became his escape. He wasn't the smartest kid in the room, but he was relentless. He studied like every test was a door he had to force open. Teachers noticed. A scholarship followed, small but real. He took it and ran. College was brutal in different ways. He worked construction before sunrise, attended classes all day, studied until his eyes burned. There were semesters he almost quit, moments when failure felt inevitable. But every time doubt crept in, he remembered that sandwich, the apple with the bruise cut out, the girl who lied so he could eat. That memory became a compass. He graduated, clawed his way into finance through internships no one else wanted, learned how money moved, how power disguised itself as opportunity. He failed at his first business venture, lost everything, slept on a friend's couch, but he didn't break. Each loss hardened him, taught him patience, discipline, timing. Eventually, something clicked. An investment paid off. Then another. His name began circulating quietly, then louder. He wore success awkwardly at first, uncomfortable in tailored suits, and used to rooms where people listened when he spoke. But he adapted not by erasing where he came from, but by honoring it. At night, alone in apartments that were too clean, too silent, he sometimes stood at the window and wondered if she was okay. He didn't know her last name, didn't know where life had taken her, only that he owed her more than money. Years blurred together until the past began knocking louder. On a rain-soaked evening in Chicago, she finished a double shift at the hospital, body heavy with fatigue, mind still replaying patients' faces. She stepped into the night, rain slicing sideways, and turned the key in her aging car. The engine sputtered, coughed, then died. She rested her forehead against the steering wheel, exhaling slowly, gathering patience she was tired of spending. Her phone battery flashed red. The street was quiet, unfamiliar. She stepped out, rain soaking her coat, trying to remember the last time she'd asked anyone for help. Headlights approached, slowed, then stopped. A black car pulled over. She braced herself. The man who stepped out moved with confidence that made her wary. Tall, well-dressed, umbrella opening smoothly over his head. "You need help?" he asked, voice steady. She nodded cautiously. When she looked up, the world tilted. Recognition wasn't instant. It crept in, subtle and electric. The eyes, older, steadier, but unmistakable. Her breath caught. "It's you," she said, surprised by how certain she was. He froze, rain hitting his shoulders as the umbrella tilted uselessly. For a moment, neither of them spoke, years compressing into the space between heartbeats. "I've been looking for you," he said finally, disbelief softening his voice. He called for a tow, insisted she sit in the car. The warmth inside felt surreal. They drove through the city in silence, rain tapping against glass, both unsure where to start. "I didn't forget," he said quietly, hands tight on the wheel. She looked at him, really looked at him, seeing not wealth but effort etched into posture, restraint. "Neither did I," she admitted, though she'd never planned to see him again. When he stopped outside her building, the rain had slowed, like the city itself was holding its breath. "I'm not here because of a promise," he said. "I just wanted to thank you, and maybe see who you became." She smiled, tired but real. "Then come back tomorrow," she said. "Coffee. No promises." And as he nodded, something settled between them. Not a fairy tale, not a debt, but the fragile beginning of something honest, built not on wealth, but on memory, growth, and the quiet power of kindness remembered. Morning came softly, the kind of quiet that feels earned. She woke before her alarm, the rain from the night before still clinging to the windows like a memory that refused to leave. For a moment, she wondered if the encounter had been a trick of exhaustion, something her mind had stitched together after too many hours on her feet. But when she checked her phone and saw his message, short, respectful, simply saying he'd be at the cafe on the corner at 9 if she still wanted to come, her chest tightened in a way that felt both familiar and new. She moved through her routine slowly, choosing her clothes with care, not to impress, but to feel like herself. At the cafe, the smell of coffee wrapped around her, grounding. He was already there, seated by the window, sleeves rolled up, hands folded like he didn't quite know where to put them. When he looked up and saw her, something unguarded crossed his face. They smiled at the same time, awkward and sincere. Conversation came easier than either expected. They spoke about ordinary things at first: work, the city, how much Chicago had changed and how much it hadn't. He listened more than he talked, asked thoughtful questions, didn't interrupt. She noticed that, when the past finally surfaced, it did so gently. "That day," he said, staring into his cup, "I was sure I'd disappear if no one saw me." "You saw me." She nodded. "I didn't think it would matter," she admitted. "I just knew you were hungry." He laughed quietly. It mattered. Over the weeks that followed, they learned each other as they were now, not as the children they'd been. He didn't arrive with grand gestures or expensive surprises. Instead, he showed up consistently, texting to check if she got home safe, remembering details she mentioned in passing, respecting the boundaries she didn't have to explain. She told him about her patience, the losses that stayed with her, the pride she felt when someone walked out of the hospital stronger than they arrived. He told her about failure, real failure, and how success felt less like victory and more like responsibility. One evening, walking along the river as the city lights flickered on, he stopped and looked at her seriously. "I need you to know," he said. "I'm not trying to be the man from the promise. I'm just trying to be honest." She appreciated that more than he knew. Trust didn't bloom overnight. She had learned to be careful with hope, to test it gently before leaning in. There were moments she pulled back, moments when old fears whispered that this was temporary, that life didn't usually reward people like her with fairy tale endings. He sensed it and didn't push. Instead, he stayed steady. When her mother fell ill and hospital visits blurred into long nights, he brought soup and silence, sat in uncomfortable chairs without complaint. When she questioned whether she belonged in rooms filled with donors and executives at events he invited her to, he stood beside her, never ahead, never behind. Slowly, something shifted. The promise from the fence transformed, not into obligation, but into shared choice. One night, months later, they returned to the old schoolyard. The fence was gone now, replaced by a mural bursting with color, faces lifted in joy and defiance. She stood there, surprised by the ache in her throat. "This is where it was," she said softly. He nodded, eyes shining. "I know." He reached into his pocket. Not for a ring, not yet, but for a folded piece of paper worn at the edges. "I wrote this years ago," he said. "Whenever things got hard." It was a list, goals, reminders, one line written darker than the rest. "Find her. Say thank you." She laughed through tears. "You already did," she said. He took her hands then, warm and sure. "I don't need to be rich anymore," he said. "I just need to be worthy." She squeezed his fingers. "You are," she said, because she meant it. Their love didn't erase the past or magically smooth every hardship. They argued sometimes. They learned each other's flaws the hard way. But it was real, built on memory and growth, not rescue or debt. When he finally asked her to marry him, it wasn't with fireworks or headlines. It was in their kitchen, dinner half burned, laughter filling the room. "I promised you something once," he said, nervous in a way that felt sweet. "This time, I'm not promising because I'm poor or because I'm rich. I'm promising because I choose you." She said yes without hesitation. Not because he came back wealthy. Not because he kept a childhood vow. But because he returned as a man who remembered hunger, honored kindness, and understood that love, like food, means the most when it's shared freely.